on the roots of prejudice. All four participants in today's discussion are high school students from Africa. Let me introduce them to you now. First, from the Gold Coast is 18-year-old Alfred Bannerman. We call him Nini. It all started, Nini tells us, when he was born, he looked like a little old man, and Nini is a term of respect for an old man. We still call him Nini, and he considers it a term of respect. From Nigeria, Mohammed Liman, 18 years old. From the Union of South Africa, Dix Loubser. Dix, well, you should see him do the rock and roll. From Ethiopia, 17-year-old Nebiat Tafari. It was Nebiat's suggestion that we start this discussion with a prayer in case there should be violence later. What you heard was Nebiat from Ethiopia giving a prayer in the Ge'ez language. He's a Copt by religion, Amhara by race, Hebrew in origin, and an African since he's been to America. How should we start this discussion on prejudice? Would it be unfair to ask each of you what your own prejudices are? How about you, Nebi?
Actually, I'm prejudiced against the Italians, and I have been prejudiced against the Mohammedans. Since I arrived here, I have developed some new prejudices, and I never felt that I was a Negro till I came to this country.
Why?
Because my tutor in the monastery told me that I was not a Negro, but I was a sunburned Hebrew.
You mentioned that you have prejudices against Mohammedans. I am a Mohammedan, and I have prejudices against Christians too in southern Nigeria.
So you said you have prejudices against Christians in southern Nigeria. Is that particularly because they are Christians? I'm a Christian myself, but I have no prejudice against Mohammedans. I rather prejudice against whites.
But why have you got prejudice against the whites in the Gold Coast?
I think it's sort of this kind. At first, I was not prejudiced against whites anyway. I was prejudiced against fellow Africans because I had some opportunities which some of the Africans didn't get. I was brought up in a city. I lived the Western way. I dressed the Western style, and I did everything Western. And so I was looking down upon fellow Africans who live in the villages, in the rural areas. As I developed, I started getting some political ideas. Especially, I'm very much interested in the problem in South Africa. We hear quite often about how the blacks are treated there, how everything goes on there. And for instance, everybody knows that we get good friendship and peace in the world through games like the Olympic Games and those kinds of games. But everybody knows that the team from the Union of South Africa has not got a single African, which means the people in South Africa think of themselves as superior beings. And this thing gives me more ideas just to be prejudiced and discriminate against the whites. And so I'd like you to explain to me some of the policies of the apartheid system and the basic idea to the logical conclusion.
Well, in South Africa, one must realize this fact, overseas people especially, and that is that this is the first case in history that a white nation has settled itself in a black country. In the whole of Africa, there are 190 million Africans, 190 million Negroes.
Yes.
And in Southern Africa, there are almost 3 million white people. That means less than 3%. Now, in South Africa itself, the blacks outnumber the whites there by 4-1. In the States here, they outnumber the white people outnumber the Negroes 8-1. For that reason, and for the reason, and for this fact, that one cannot ever draw a parallel line between the Negroes in South Africa and the Negroes in the States. The Negroes in the States are far above the Negroes in South Africa as far as education and civilization goes. Now, the government's policy of apartheid, that policy, the guiding principle of this policy is to help the non-whites in South Africa to self-realization in their own territories and within their own communities so that they can govern themselves. Gradually, they'll be given more and more power to govern themselves. Now, that's what the guiding principle is, and that's what the white man in South Africa is doing.
Let me make this point clear. You say they want the Africans to develop themselves. And so will you allow the Africans to get their own governments and their own representations? Or will you like to give them the rules and the laws by yourselves?
No,
we force them and do everything.
We're not going to force them to do anything.
No, the point is, I know that in South Africa, you have a government, and there is not a single African in the government. There are 9 million Africans as against 2 million whites. Why is it that there is not a single African in the government of South Africa.
Well, they're nine representatives for the.
But I mean, how can 9 Englishmen or 9 Europeans represent 9 million Africans? How can they know their problems and their ideas? These people are Africans. You believe in separateness. The Africans separate and the whites separate. Well, how then can it happen that you get whites representing Africans
I don't think
they are separate?
I don't think that is fair either. Since the people in the House of Representatives, do you call it? That's
right.
They are supported by the taxes paid by the natives, aren't they?
No, just a minute. There, you've gone altogether wrong. If South Africa was to subsist on the taxes that the Bantu in South Africa pay, then South Africa would drop just like that.
Then,
Okay.
on what do they support? What supports them?
What?
The House of Representatives or the people in the government? The officials?
That's the 2.5 million white people that are supporting themselves and the overwhelming black population. 12 million black people. It's those 2.5 million to 3 million white people that are supporting the lot.
Could you just explain how they are able to support themselves and how they are able to support?
You mean
all
the
these
white
people?
people?
Yeah, and how they are able to conduct this development without the assistance of the natives?
Because they've got the Western idea of working and they've developed that country.
Oh, I see. They've developed that country through the Africans working. I know that the whites in South Africa went down there because of wealth. It was through the gold rush and all those things that happened that, I mean, we got white men in South Africa. And so they went down there purposely to use the Africans as tools for their own benefits. Isn't that?
When the white men went down there, they never even knew a black man existed down there. When the white man landed at the bottom of the Cape in 1652, the black people in South Africa hadn't even moved over the northern boundary of the Union of South Africa.
Yes. I know these people would like to get these sociological ideas just to get around the question. So far as I know, the people in South Africa are a nomadic tribe by career or by profession. They are headsmen who move with their cattle all around the belt. Nowadays, even in the olden days. Okay. It might happen that they were living down south, but because of their profession, they happened to live up north. Because in those days, there were warring tribes which were waging wars against each other. And so you cannot say that the land is yours. Everybody knows that Africa is for Africans. And when we think of Africans, we think of blacks. That's how I know. Well,
just to give you a short
policy, and you are using the policy of aggressors that the land, the earth belongs to everybody, and the one that is powerful rules the part of the world which is owned by the others. That's the policy that aggressors use.
You know who are the aggressors? It's the African National Congress in Africa. They are the aggressors.
No, how can there be?
If the Africans in Africa would stop being so militant and would rather get down and help and build up South Africa and build up Africa, the problem would cease almost immediately.
Okay, let me ask you this thing. You said if they can come down and help, the problem will cease.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, how can they help if you get 9 million Africans and 3 million Europeans, and you get only 9 Europeans representing the interests of these Africans? Do you believe, let me ask you this personal question. Do you believe, according to your apartheid policy, in getting 2 South Africas, one South Africa for the Africans and one South Africa for this thing, with 2 different colonial policies and 2 different foreign policies?
No.
If you don't, give me the answer.
Well, I wouldn't be able to give you the definite answer right now.
Why? You believe in separateness. And why don't you believe in getting the Africans separate, having their own government and everything, thereby creating 2 union of South Africans? That's the point. But so far as you believe in apartheid, it means you believe in separateness. Then keep the Africans separate with their own governments, with their own money, with their own everything. And keep the white separate.
Excuse me, I'll just come in there.
Okay.
He said that if Africans will just calm down and then cooperate with them, the land will achieve peacefulness. Right. Do you mean that the Africans are the people who are really the aggressors against you? You are not really aggressive towards Africans. I mean,
of course not. The general attitude in South Africa, and I come from a country, I know every summer that we have, every holiday at least that I have, I go and spend on the farms, and I live amongst these natives. I really get to know what they do and what they are like. The general attitude of the white people in South Africa is sympathetic towards the black people. They regard themselves as the trustees of the.
I mean, why shouldn't they be sympathetic? The point is, I always stress this fact that there are 9 million Africans and 3 million whites.
Exactly. So,
if you come to South Africa, there are only 43 Africans with university degrees who are graduates. If you come to the Gold Coast, you have thousands of them. Gold Coast is a black colony, just like South Africa. But we have been able to develop everything, which shows the capability of the African to do anything itself. But we have been able to get all these ideas through the mixture of Western ideas. Actually, we couldn't develop on our own, until we got British help. And since we got the help, we have been able to do everything ourselves. If you go down to South Africa and help the Africans with your ideas, getting, free mixture of ideas, everything will be okay. But the point is, you use the Africans as tools. You tell them that don't be in this city after 9 o'clock, don't wear this thing, don't do this thing, don't go to America, and the Africans don't go any part apart. Anywhere at all outside the South African Union.
You know, the white people in South Africa aren't allowed in the black areas either after dark.
It's because you created this situation. Why don't get free mixture? You look down on the Africans. That's the point. Am I quite clear? Because you said you believe in separateness, and I want you to come down to this point. You have not answered my question.
Just let me interfere. What's the fundamental cause of all this discrimination in South Africa? The one fundamental cause.
Firstly, because the Bantu in South Africa is not as educated and as highly civilized.
And therefore?
Yes.
And therefore
we've got to live with them together in that land. Remember that.
You mean
you people want us to give them equal franchise rights. We give them equal franchise rights within hardly any time whatsoever. The white man in South Africa will have absolutely no say in anything.
But you have been
in this case, you don't have any choice. Suppose now you think that if the society of the white and the society of the blacks is mixed, it will be quite dangerous for you because these people are not as civilized as the white. Exactly. Suppose these people are kept in separation and you educate them, and the government, I think, believes within the 20 years they will be of the same standard as the white. And this means that you are giving them help mechanically, and unless you mix with them, if they are as good as you, then they will say, get away, who cares for you? Yeah. You must realize the fact that they will do so because you were not exchanging ideas for developing these people in terms of friendship.
But that's exactly what we're doing.
No.
The black man and the white man in South Africa are working together.
No.
There's constant contact between the ministers and the Bantu.
No, but
yes.
How can 9 white men get the interest of 9 million Africans? That's the point. If you get the Africans there in the government themselves,
it's not just
they can be able.
It's not just 9 men, and it's not the 9 million black people aren't just sitting there and waiting for the government to do something for them. They're governing themselves. They got local governments already.
Yes.
And they're getting more and more local government.
Answer this question for me. I was asking you a personal question, if you don't mind. The point is, you believe in separateness.
Yes.
You believe that if you keep the Africans separate, entirely separate, and the whites entirely separate, you can be able to live in South Africa?
Yeah. You mustn't take this idea of separateness or apartheid too literal. It doesn't mean that's fenced around and blacks live there and whites live there.
That's how it is.
Oh, no.
If you go to South Africa, tell me this thing. You come near Johannesburg. Africans are not allowed to be in Johannesburg after 9 o'clock. Am I quite clear? Is it true?
No, it's not.
Is it not true?
In Johannesburg, after dark,
yes.
It's just those hooligans that walk around there. After dark, any self-respecting Bantu or white person won't venture out of doors.
Okay. Come to this point.
I believe
if you
that
go to the railway
Bantus
station,
are not the same as you think of them. There may be the minority.
I've been in contact with them all the time since I've grown up. I know what they're like.
But how far does the government make use of those who are educated, for example?
They're going back to help educate and uplift their people.
No, they are not going back. The point is you try to educate these Africans to go back and help their people.
Exactly.
And that is where I tell you that there are only 43 Africans with university degrees. How can these 43 Africans go back with their Western ways and Western everything to this African society and help the people? The people will not understand them because you are turning back to primitivism in South Africa. And so when these people go down to the Africans don't, as it were, get them nicely.
You're always talking about you can't learn to swim unless you get into the water.
Yeah.
Well, you can't start educating them unless you send those that are educated back to them.
You have to start educating them, for the 300 years that, South Africa has existed. We have been in the Gold Coast with Western contact for only 100 years. But if you come to the Gold Coast now, we are able to do everything ourselves. We are, at present, I'm sitting down equally with you.
You can't, it's absolutely unrealistic and stupid to compare South Africa with the Gold Coast.
Yes.
There's absolutely no comparison.
But basically, we are all African.
Just let me finish.
Oh, no.
In South Africa, at least in the Gold Coast, there has never been enough white men there to constitute the nationhood.
Yes.
if the Gold Coasters at any time wanted to drive him out, and they drove him out, those white men have got England for their homeland.
The only thing I know is, according to the partition of Africa and the scramble for Africa in 1884, all the white men came to Africa and they settled at the places which suit them best, according to health. If you go to South Africa, the climate is Mediterranean in certain places, so you see white men there. If you go to East Africa, it is tropical, but because of the highlands, it's relatively cooler, and so you see white men there. That's why you get the mama in East Africa. In the Gold Coast, it's jungle, mosquitoes and everything, and so the white men don't like to live in the Gold Coast. That's natural.
And Nini, and excuse me, Nebiat, and Dix, I want to ask you this. Dix just said that there weren't enough white men in the Gold Coast. Would your point of view be that believing in separateness, you've kept yourself so separated from the white men in the Gold Coast that maybe your standard of living has...
No, ma'am. We were just keeping, side by side with them. I tell you at first that if you come to the Gold Coast, through the contact with the whites, we have been able to develop. We can never develop on our own. That's the point. But we got Western ways and Western ideas and Western help. That's why we are, as equal to the whites now.
I suppose it's a different case with countries in West Africa. You see, we in West Africa, we were brought under the British rule, but you can't compare that with the Union of South Africa, because the white went there to live and not to bring these people to a higher standard of living and to educate them and bring and allow them to realize the full significance of civilization.
The Africans, they are the citizens. If they are citizens, why deny them these rights?
We're not denying them the rights.
Let me ask Mohammed another question. You said at the beginning that you were Mohammedan, that Nini was Christian, that you had some prejudices against Christians.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a fairly frank question. Do you have any sense that Nini from the Gold Coast is less purely African than you are?
Yeah, I often feel that.
Why?
You see, we in Nigeria, and now part of Nigeria, northern Nigeria, we often feel that Africa is for Muslims, not for Christians. It's meant for Muslims. And our social life is entirely different from the Western ways. We are totally opposed to it because it sort of try to disassociate our religious principles.
We were talking a moment ago about discrimination between white and black. Suppose Nini comes to visit you in Nigeria. Would he be discriminated against in any way?
I suppose so, simply because for one reason. So we eat in a bowl. We in my home, we put a big bowl down, and you have about 3 or 4 people putting their hands all at the same time into the bowl.
There is a level of competition.
And you see, we don't allow Christians to interfere. We don't allow Christians to put their hands inside. You see, it's one of our religious doctrines. We don't allow. We're not supposed to eat with Christians in the same bowl unless we're obligated to. And so that's one of the things which you will...
On this question of religion, I'd like to ask you one more thing. I've heard it said recently that Islam is gaining rapidly in Africa and Christian influence is declining. Is that true?
I wouldn't say definitely it is not true, but to some extent it is. You see, there are two sides to it. We have the Ahmadiyya movement in Nigeria. They come from Pakistan, and I think it originated about 1885. I don't know.
I wonder if Nini would agree with you that Christianity is on the way.
I agree with him. The point is, Muslim teaches purely African principles. That's the case. They had the Mohammedan influence in Africa, around about West Africa, in about 1,000 years ago. About some few centuries ago. But Christianity came down in Africa about 200 years ago. And through Christian influence, we are able to adopt Western ways of life and Western everything. And so more people like to adopt Christianity, whereby they try to become Western. Because most of the missionaries who come down there are Americans or Englishmen. And people like to follow the style because of singing and everything, because African likes music.
But you wouldn't say a person joins a religion simply because he finds it very easy or because he finds that he can conform his social customs to it.
No.
You follow it because you understand that it is a true religion and your spiritual understandings agree with it.
No, what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying that Western ideas are best to the African. I believe in African getting everything African. But the point is, we know and everybody knows that if you get some things African, they are sometimes bad. So I believe in getting Western ideas. And through Christianity, we are able to teach the people decent ways of life and different everything. For instance, Mohammedans will not eat with the Christians, which is bad. It doesn't bring peace to the world. But through Christianity, we are able to teach pure love and love for everything.
But
so more Africans like
haven't
to...
you heard me?
I said, if of Christianity, there are Orthodox Christians who don't allow to mix with Mohammedans. For example, I belong to a real Orthodox Christian religion known as the Copt, and there it says that its origin, of course, from Judaism also. It says that the animal must be properly slaughtered before you eat it. And if a Mohammedan has already slaughtered a sheep or a cow, for example, I will not eat with him.
I'm sure there are infinite prejudices in your country alone between Amharas and Hebrews and Arabs. You do say your origin is Hebrew, do you not? And most of the Ethiopians are. We could talk for ages on that, but there's another question I want very much to ask all of you. That is, what did you hear about race problems in America before you came? Is our problem greater or less than you thought?
I thought it was greater before I came. I mean, because of the nationalistic feelings in the Gold Coast, everybody is prejudiced against the whites because we want to get the best positions in the government. At present, we have it though. But I mean, in the olden days, we wanted to get them. And so we were always constant on the point to listen to some of these things which happen in America. About 70% of the news about America are concerning racial prejudice.
Is that true in the Gold Coast, Dick? How much news, American news, is concerned? I'm sorry, in South Africa.
Well, very little. Except the case like the recent Supreme Court case comes up, then that receives attention in the South African newspapers. But we realize what the position is here in the States, and we got a problem much bigger than ours back home.
Was our problem greater than you thought it would be, or less?
Oh, I think it's bigger than I thought it would be, because I imagine when I came over here that all the Negroes were as well educated as the white people, and that's not always the case, especially down south. And then I didn't expect to find them as confident.
Experiences with segregation here in this country?
Well, I've just got something quite insignificant. You know, people get to know that I'm a foreigner, and so they treat me differently. When I came at first, I tried to get an American haircut, appear in American clothes as best as possible and as much as possible, just for people to discriminate against me. But I've never had such an occasion. I've been trying to get it, but I mean, it seems as if I've been getting the best, actually.
Much friendliness.
Yes, ma'am.
How about you, Navy?
This is rather superficial, but I was living in one of the communities in New Jersey, which is strictly white resident, and there I couldn't get a haircut for about 2 weeks because the white man don't know how to cut this type of hair. And one of the boys was joking to me that he said that the best engineers in the United States are working hard to design an instrument that will be of some use to cut this hair.
No, that's not discrimination.
Well, this is another sort of discrimination because United States is a business country, and if they discourage their customers by means of types of hair, then they are defeating their own purpose.
I found a little bit of segregation, form of segregation at any rate, and that is I was speaking to residents in New Jersey, while they were teachers, and they told me that although it's officially prohibited by law, there are what they call gentlemen's agreements, whereby a Negro cannot obtain land or buy property in a white man's area. Then, on the other hand, I found that on the whole, the Negroes are not as economically sound as the white men are. And then too, in the recent case where Negro and white schools have been integrated, the Negro teachers have lost their jobs.
See, let's come to this point. You said they are not economically sound as the white men. The point is, in America, for instance, if you get much education, you get better pay, better job. If you deny the Negro opportunities to go to college, how do you expect them to get better qualifications, to occupy the better jobs, and get better pay for the houses? That's the point. I'm now getting some of these facts from the papers. I every day read about the problem which is happening down in Alabama, and I see quite a lot of those things. Those are some of the experiences of segregation that I've seen in America now. Obviously, I can take back some of these ideas with me, but they are just insignificant. As I said at first, I've met with friendliness in America, but in certain aspects too, I see some of these things, you see. That's the point. Think of the education first. I believe in education.
Do you know something? In South Africa, Last year, we spent $42 million on educating the Bantu there, and 3/4 of that was paid by the white people. 40% of the Bantu school children are going to school, and the literacy rate in the Union of South Africa now amongst the Bantu is 27.7, and within the next 20 years, it'll be 100% literacy.
Why is it that
Yeah.
then? Why is it that,
Yeah,
then
right,
that you have not got a delegate who is African for the whole year that you have been operating this forum? I'm sure that next year a white man is going to come here as a delegate for the Union of South Africa, though there are 9 million South Africans who are Africans. So don't think of this thing as something like literacy. I know that the literacy rate in South Africa is 16%, but
No,
the point, 27%. But the point is, the Africans just get the elementary education in the African quarters, which is fit for nothing but unskilled labor.
To sum up a little bit, Nini, what's the best thing your government can do, the most significant thing to help attack this problem?
At present, we are not yet fully self-government. We do everything ourselves in the government. But the last one is defense and external affairs. Great Britain is controlling this. And the moment we become independent, we can prove to the outside world that the African can rule himself and the black can govern himself. And so
What would you say to your
the only
government,
thing.
Dick?
The government must definitely apply this policy of apartheid more firmly and more thoroughly, and apply it and carry it out more rapidly than it's done in the future.
There's a final question I'd like to ask you. Since the population of the world, the percentage between white and non-white is roughly what it is here, I'm sure Dix and I are wondering when the 3/4 of the human race that is not white gets political power. What are you going to do to the whites? Segregate them?
Well, if we practice segregation, then we will be as bad as the white. So what we will do is we'll allow them to mix with us, and in the meantime unite ourselves like that we did in the Bannerman conference.
Well, listen to me. When Mr. Good Marshall, the attorney to Miss Lucy, when he came down from Alabama to New York, this is what he said. He said that sometimes Negro organizations and individual Negroes, through their help to save the white man, so become a little bit tired. So I think probably that's our mission.
To save the white man's
Yeah,
soul.
to save the white man's soul.
Thank you, Nini. I'm sorry that's all the time we have. Thank you all. Next week, we'll continue the discussion with 4 other students on the roots of prejudice. Until then, we must bid you goodbye.